With this video, I want to summarize the book Eat That Frog. I will summarize every chapter and also the intro. Asked successful people how they did it. And this is especially not only about successful people, I would say, but asking other people how they are doing it in general. And then, of course, talking with other people about it who are already very successful in their field. You can gain the insights from what worked for them and then also incorporate them into your own life. So the book is named Eat That Frog, and that basically means you should do the thing first which has the most important impact in your life, and then make this behavior a habit. First chapter. Set the table. Clearly written goals can increase the drive to achieve them. So what I do, in the evening, I decide on 2 goals which I really want to do in the next day, which are the most important ones. I will write it down, and also I will write down the first step. Then I will set up everything so I can start immediately the next day. Then make a list of all the tasks for one goal. This one I personally don't do. Make a sequential plan. Personally, I also don't do that. But take action immediately. This one I try to do because I think this is the key to avoid procrastination. And then do something every day to move forward, create forward momentum, and make it a habit. Chapter 2. Plan every day in advance. So in this book, there are all kinds of lists recommended to make. Daily list, weekly list, monthly list, and master list. Just try a couple of lists and then take those lists which work for you. There's in general this rule which is called the 10-90 rule, which means 10% of the time you spend for planning will save 90% of the time for executing. So for me, I started trying a weekly list. The problem there was if I just have a weekly list, I don't do the daily list. On the daily list, I will choose 2 tasks, which are my biggest frogs, which I will do next morning. Then I have a focus. And also the daily list helps you to subconsciously prepare yourself for the next day. Chapter 3. Apply the 80-20 rule to everything. So the 80-20 rule is basically saying, out of all the things you do, 80% are not so important and 20% are very important. So what I often do is I do some small things so I can tell myself, yeah, I'm doing something, but in truth, I'm actually procrastinating. It's very important to resist cleaning up these small tasks and do always the high impact tasks first. For me, I can kind of design my environment that I use less willpower to work on the 20%. For example, if I have my smartphone off, then I can really focus. Or if I start really in the morning and have my clothes ready, everything ready, that I can start as soon as possible on the 20%. What I realized, if I do a lot of small impact tasks at the end of the day, I will not feel so motivated. So I need to really do the big frogs to get the big motivation. Chapter 4. Consider the long-term consequences. So, what he's saying here, long-term thinking improves short-term decision making. For me, it's also I would translate the statement into choose between the path of least resistance and what you truly want. And of course, between these 2 options, there are many other options as well. For example, maybe the path of least resistance would be just stay in bed and eat chocolate or watch movies or something. And the path of what you truly want would maybe be to change the world. And then between these paths, maybe you end up studying because that's the thing what is kind of still least resistance. You do something what society and family expect, but it's still not changing the world. Sometimes it's difficult, and what I advertise is, okay, let's do the things we truly want and try to be as close to the things we truly want and not to what is the path of least resistance. Also, he's recommending to plan in a buffer of 20% to make your plans realistic. You can ask yourself questions like, what are my highest value activities, and what is the most valuable use of my time right now? Chapter 5. Procrastinate purposely on low value tasks. Why don't we try to leave our smartphones off when we wake up in the morning and do the thing we want to do in the morning? Some people might say, yeah, but I need to be available for some people. Okay, how about we create some channels where only these people could reach us, but we don't get all the other notifications? Could be possible, I guess. So the reason why we cut down on low value activities is so we can instead do something else that enhances our life quality. This is the ABCDE method. In this method, you make a list and then you define each task with ABCDE. There are many different strategies and you have to find out which one works for you. A is the most important task. And if you have more than one A task, you can make it A1, A2, A3, and so forth. I recommend, if you use this list, only have 2 A tasks or something, because otherwise it's just another list again. Then B tasks are tasks you should do, but which only have mild consequences if you don't follow up on them. Then, of course, there's the rule you should never do a B task when you still have A tasks. C tasks are tasks which are nice to have but without consequences. D tasks are tasks you can delegate. So E tasks are tasks you can eliminate altogether and it won't really make a difference. As always, start immediately. Or if you start tomorrow, set everything up so you need basically 0 willpower to get started the next day. Focus on one key result area. You cannot just say, okay, let me just focus on everything, because then you're not focusing. So for example, you cannot just make a to-do list of all the tasks and then say, okay, I will focus on all the ones in a sequential order. You have to say, okay, what are the key result areas? You can think about yourself maybe as a body. So there's some body functions like blood pressure, your heart rate, and these are some key result areas. If maybe your blood pressure is low, your body, even if all the other areas are good, can't perform optimal. So for example, in your job, you can ask yourself the question, okay, why I am on the payroll? And then find the 5 key answers why you're on the payroll and then try to improve them. You can give yourself a grade. And if one of them is not good, let's say you're performing high on 4 out of the 5 key result areas, but one is low, then this low one will indicate your overall performance. It's like with your body. The question you can ask yourself, okay, what is the one key result area? If I improve that one, for example, maybe the blood pressure, just as an example, then my overall performance will also increase. Yeah, and then we can make this a habit to analyze what will help us to increase our overall performance. So the law of 3, chapter 8 is saying there are basically 3 things in our life which will account for 90% of whatever we contribute. If we contribute to our organization or to our hobbies. So the way you can do that, write a list of all the things you're doing, then ask yourself the question, what out of all these things would I do if I could just do one thing all day long? And then you ask yourself again, what second thing would I do if I could do a second thing all day long? And a third thing. And then everything else on the list might be a support task, complementary, or not so important. So we try to minimize all these things. And then there's this quick list method to really find what is important to us. So we give ourselves 30 seconds and then write down the 3 most important tasks in our life. It helps if we do it really quick, because subconsciously we come up actually with a quite good answer. So I tried this one, it worked quite well. just doing it quickly kind of helps to overcome inertia. And you can also look at yourself, you kind of evaluate how well am I doing on these things. And then you can do this, find the three biggest things in all different kind of fields: personal development, relationship, financial goals, career, and so forth. And then why are we actually doing all these things? The thing is to keep the balance. And we always need to keep the balance. For example, in the past when I was studying, I was thinking, okay, if I study really hard, like every minute of the day, I will have the most impact. It didn't really work for me. Like, I need this balance. And at least he's saying in the book, 95, 85%, maybe it's also 95% of our happiness will come from good relationship with other people and the amount of time we meet them. So that's really the reason why we do all this. And then it's like having things we enjoy will even be more enjoyable when we work hard. So they really go hand in hand. Okay, chapter 9. Prepare thoroughly before you begin. So if I can separate the preparation phase and when I really start, I can kind of reduce the willpower a lot. Because when I prepare, for example, the evening before, I can tell myself, okay, now I'm just preparing. I'm not really working. And later, then when I start working the next day, I don't need to prepare, and I can tell myself, see, everything is already set up. You just need to start. So that one helps me a lot to kind of manage the activation energy. What the author was saying, get it 80% right and then correct it later. The thing is, we want to do it perfect because we are scared of rejection, of failure. But then if the other option is we procrastinate for a long time or don't do anything, it's also not helpful. So in the book, he was saying no matter what level of ability you have more potential than you can ever develop in a lifetime. So let's not be held back by the fear of failure or rejection. So to develop the courage, you can act as if you already have it, assume the body language, and then get it 80% right and you can correct it later. Chapter 10, take it one oil barrel at a time. So basically every step counts. And sometimes know the best strategy and we can know about the best books and everything, but still we don't take action. That is why actually every step is so important. So he was writing about an example where he was crossing the desert and every 5 kilometers there was an oil barrel. So that helped them immensely to see always the next step and do it so they could get through the desert without having any problem. Sometimes we are procrastinating on big goals or even small goals, but we just need to take the step. So this is basically for me, the discrepancy between knowing and action. We can know so many things, but man, let's just take the step and this will help us to overcome inertia and get started. Make a list of all the steps. But I'm like, I don't like to make a list of all the steps, it's too much. But what I can do is make a list of the first step. Because if I do the first step, then I kind of already overcame inertia. Then I can do the next step and so forth. Upgrade your key skills, especially with exams. It's not always so much fun studying. But I think if we can make it fun in our life, we can make it a lifelong habit. She's saying, okay, identify the key skills which you need to fulfill your most important task in life. And then, as a minimum rule, you need to continuously study and learn to be successful in your field. We cannot achieve all these tasks if we do all of them with discipline. So we have to make it fun and a habit to make it work for us. Okay, chapter 12, leverage your special talents. Follow your talent and your purpose. So to do that, you really need to know what's your own why. And to find out, you can say, okay, what am I really good at? What has been most responsible for my success in the past? what would I do if I knew I could not fail? So this question, the last one, I especially like because it's like cutting through all our limiting beliefs and then asking, okay, what do I really want to do if I knew I could not fail? So that's the first step. Ask yourself questions to kind of see the answer of your inner compass. And then make a plan and then focus basically on those areas where you have special talents and work on them. If you are able to work a lot in your field, you kind of naturally become an outlier in that field. Chapter 13. Identify your key constraints. We all have our limiting beliefs, and if we can free ourselves from them, we can be much more successful and do much more of the things we really want to do. So find out your key constraints which are holding you back and then focus all your energy to remove them. If we spend a little bit of time to remove our constraints, then we can use the time much more effectively afterwards. And then there is this 80-20 rule, which I kind of find very empowering. Basically, it's saying 80% of the constraints are within ourselves. So maybe limiting beliefs we have, or within the organization, and only 20% of the constraints are external. So if we see the world like, okay, there are constraints, but I can not do anything about them because they're outside of me, because I don't have money to start my business, then we can translate it into an internal constraint, into a limiting belief. Okay, we think I need money to do this, but what other possibilities are there? And then we can try to find 80% of this constraint within ourselves and remove it to get started. Okay, put pressure on yourself. So in the book he's saying only about 2% of people are working entirely without supervision. So they are motivating themselves. They are knowing themselves what to do next. And we call these people leaders. So you can try to find out, okay, what is working for me? So you can set imaginary deadlines. For example, you can say, okay, I have to leave town tomorrow. What are the things I have to get done today? Or you can create your own motivation system, something nice in the evening. Or a friend of mine is creating his own force system with stick.com. You write goals, and then if you don't do them, you lose money. I also did that, but then it didn't work for me because I really lost money and now I don't like it anymore. And then you can break down your project into milestones with deadlines and race against your own deadlines. So just find what is working for yourself. Okay, chapter 15, maximize your personal powers. So the first step is you identify when do you have the highest energy. For example, maybe in the morning if you're fresh. Whenever this time is when you have your highest energy, you put the most important task there and do it. Then sleep. Many people are thinking if I sleep less, I get more done. But there's so much science about it, it's just not right. It's true that some people need to sleep less and some people sleep more, but according to the National Sleep Foundation, you need 8 to 9 hours of sleep. So what I do, I discipline myself to go to bed in the evening, and then in the morning I get up without an alarm. If you're fully rested, you achieve 2 to 5 times more. At least that's what they're saying in the book. Working long hours in the night also means that you get less and less done and more time. If you already work 8 or 9 hours full concentrated, then basically you achieved a lot. And then also have a spare day. So we always need to be in the balance. So you can have a spare day, you can use it as a buffer. You can plan your week and have one day where you don't do any of the work you want to do and you do just the things you enjoy. And then physical health, of course. So physical health, eat healthy, exercise. So what he's recommending 200 minutes per week. So that's like 30 minutes per day. Actually, not so much, but also I'm not doing it so far, so I have to improve on that one. So select one activity or behavior that you can change immediately, then improve your behavior to improve your overall levels of energy. Then make it a habit, basically. Okay, chapter 16, motivate yourself into action. So this chapter is about positivity, because if we are motivated, if we are more optimistic, we are also more likely to do the things we want to do. So Viktor Frankl wrote in his book, "The last great freedom of mankind is the freedom to choose your attitude under any set of external conditions." So that basically means we are the ones who are interpreting the world around us and how we feel about it. If we feel motivated, we are more likely to do something about it. That's why the author is saying, okay, let's be an optimist, look for the good in every situation, seek for valuable lessons in every setback, and be solution oriented. So, in other words, find your why, because if you know why you are doing this, you're motivated and you can take an optimistic approach that you can do it. Chapter 17, get out of the technology time sinks. Make technology your servant and not your master. Create zones of silence where you really do what you really want. Even create one free day of technology, kind of a detox. And also you can look at technology with the 80-20 rule. So for example, the entire time you spend on your smartphone, maybe 20% out of it are important, but 80% are just like sightseeing or not really so valuable. Same goes with email. We can break it down into two parts. 20% out of the entire emails might be kind of important. If we take 20% out of the 20, so 4% are really important. So, and the rest is not so important. For example, our browser, often the default setting of our internet is distraction. So I think we have to be careful that our technology environment is not designed for distraction, but productivity. Okay, slice and dice the task. So there are two methods. The salami slice method, you move forward one slice at a time. And then there is a Swiss cheese method. You kind of punch a hole in the entire task. Maybe you work for 10 minutes on something, so you just create this forward momentum. So the difference between the two tasks is on the salami slice method, you work on one thing and get one thing done. And on the Swiss cheese method, you work per time. You say, okay, now I just work 5 minutes. Doesn't really matter if I get the entire thing done. And both are about creating this forward momentum. So we need to become action oriented and start immediately, as always. Chapter 19, create large chunks of time. Because after all, time is all we have. So for me, this works that I remove all the distraction, smartphone and everything else, and then just work on one task. But for other things, for example, I want to also learn another language. I didn't do it so far. So still have to figure it out. So chapter 20, develop a sense of urgency, is about what can we do to get into the flow. And in the chapter, it's advising, okay, if we develop this sense of urgency, we can get into action and into the flow. And another thing he's advising in the book is the momentum principle. So for me, I like to think about this one in terms of activation energy. Once we're doing it, it doesn't take so much energy for us to continue with it. Okay, chapter 21, single-handle every task. So he's saying in the book, when we multitask, what our brain is actually really doing, it's task shifting. When you work on one thing, just work on that, because sometimes our ideas or other tasks pop up in our brain, but then we should not shift to those tasks. We should just focus on this one task. If we have a list, we can write down the other things on the list and try not to stop with this task, because if you start something else, you're just task shifting. So yeah, this was basically the summary. Check out my blog and ciao ciao.